Hello there, welcome to my preview for Zack Parker versus John Ryder. It's a fight between two super middleweights for the WBO Interim title. The winner should be in pole position to line up a career best purse with Canelo, because the WBO belt is the next one that should be called. So the undisputed champion, if he wants to hold on to his belt, he will have to defend that title. So the winner of this fight, there's a lot at stake. It takes place at the O2 Arena, 20,000 capacity, so it's bound to be a great atmosphere. It's going to be broadcast live on BT Sport this Saturday night, November the 26th, on the Queensberry promotion show. So the promoter is Frank Warren. Parker is under his stable. I'm really pleased they managed to get this fight done with what seems to be little hassle between the two promotional, the sort of conflicting promotional stables. They managed to get this fight done quite seamlessly, which is quite refreshing. We haven't had a lot of really good, tasty, fights to look forward to over the last month or so. So this one will sort of be the cherry on the cake for this month, for November, which has seen a few fights, but nothing really to sort of sink your teeth into. So this is going to be a great fight to end the month on. And then obviously next month we've got the big Tyson Fury Chisora showdown, which, whatever you think about it, it is going to be a big fight. So onto this one. We've already ascertained the winner is going to be lined up for the biggest fight of their career. A fight that obviously against Canelo will not only bring fame, but it will also bring the fortune. So for someone like John Ryder, who's in the twilight of his career, that's a fight he would really want to end his career on. A fight with Canelo to sort of get that retirement money. And regardless of how you do, it'd be a bit of a shame if he was to retire without a world title. He'll probably go down as one of Britain's best boxers not to win a world title, similarly to Harold Graham. He was so unlucky against Callum Smith. You could say unlucky. He was kind of robbed out of that win. I don't think anyone really had him losing that fight, apart from Liverpool fans. Everyone else scored that fight to him. We'll get onto that in a bit. But just to sort of sum up about these two, how deserving they are of a Canelo fight. They've both sort of been sort of cruelly denied success, I feel. Zack Parker, his resume is a little bit thin. Again, we'll get onto that in a bit. But he has been unlucky because he wanted those Demetrius Andrade fights. There was two dates, both of them went up in smoke. The first one due to an injury, the second one due to him moving up and away onto different ventures. So he was so unlucky not to get those two big fights. One of them was going to be at Pride Park. That would have been a sort of a childhood dream for him to fight in front of, Derby Football Club's stadium, Derby County Stadium. Hopefully that's something he can do later on in the line in a world title fight. So if he wins this, Canelo wants to fight in the UK. So maybe that's a fight that can be done in the UK at the Derby County Football Stadium against Zack Parker. That's obviously going to be his aim or his dream, his ambition. So perhaps that might happen next if he gets his win. And obviously Ryder against Mundo, all three judges scored it against him. So unlucky. So he also deserves a win. He deserves success, and he deserves the Canelo fight as well. So they're equally deserving of both, of winning this fight and moving on to a huge fight, a world title fight next. So let's get into it. Let's see who wins. Ryder, like I said earlier, Parker's resume, I think personally, is quite thin on the ground. I don't think he's got many big names on there. He's had 5 KOs in a row. Some of those have had really good records, but are they as good as Ryder? Nah, I don't think so. John Ryder's going to be the biggest test of his career so far to date. I don't think he's had an opponent anywhere near as good as Ryder just yet, apart from one name, and that's his sort of one big career test, and that was Dale Williams, who I believe won the fight. Close contest. It's one of them contests where, it's a bit hard to say this, it's a bit harsh to sort of call it scrappy, But Williams, you know, his pressure, his immense sustained pressure all fight long caused Parker problems. I personally think that pressure won him the fight. Even in the rounds where Parker sort of came back into it in sort of the championship rounds, Parker sort of managed to give himself a little bit of room. Williams was still sort of throwing, going hell for leather, but he slowed, because that kind of pressure, you can't sustain it for 12 rounds. I'm sorry, but there's no way you can have the stamina engine to go that high pace for that long a time. In the championship rounds, 10 to 12, Williams slowed very slightly. He still gave it his all. He still came rushing in, throwing those big shots, putting the pressure on. But Parker just managed to find a little bit of distance and managed to sort of flick out a few southpaw jabs and skip away, moving laterally either side. And just sort of everything was a bit sort of eye-catching from those rounds. And those last 3 rounds definitely swayed the fight in his favour, even though I think pretty much all the early rounds were Williams. But it's one of those fights where it's very close, a lot of shots thrown either way, and it's one of them fights where, yeah, you can call it close. But for me, to this day, I still believe Dale Williams won that. So Parker picked up the British title there with that fight, and then he's gone on to win every fight since, a lot more convincingly now. So we know that Ryder is going to do the same thing. He's going to come in with sustained, relentless, educated pressure, which the pressure is probably not as aggressive as Williams, but it will be a bit more educated, because Ryder, when it comes to pressure and fighting on the inside, is one of the best in the country at doing that. Trained by Tony Sims, he is 34 now, so he gives away a few ages, a few years in youth to Parker, who's 6 years his junior, who's obviously 28 years old. But we know what Ryder's going to do. He's going to come in, he's going to try and close that gap, like Williams did. And, you know, you can sort of argue, did Parker struggle with that pressure? I think so, yeah. But then also, he was there for the full 12 rounds. So he might have struggled with it, but he maintained it, and he was there for the entire 12 rounds and somehow managed to get the decision in that fight. So there's 2 ways you can look at that fight. And, you know, that experience, those 12 rounds of you know, relentless pressure from a really good fighter in Dale Williams, you know, you can sort of say that those rounds are going to be invaluable when he comes up against Ryder, because he's going to be going up against a similar kind of foe, and he's had those 12 rounds in the bank. He's learned and experienced and dealt with them, so that is going to be really invaluable. So you can almost kind of say, like, he's already had like a carbon copy of this fight, maybe not completely the same, but probably very, very similar, and that's going to be really invaluable to take into this fight with Ryder. So yeah, with Ryder, it's a bit unfair to say, but his career's kind of been defined by his defeats, his controversial defeats. So the 2 that spring to mind straight away for any fight fan for Ryder is going to be obviously Billy Joe Saunders, way back in 2013 when Ryder was like 15-0 at the time, and they fought for the British middleweight title, and you know, it was a very, very, very close fight. Again, one where, depending on how you see it, is how you scored it. Depending on what sort of style you prefer. But regardless of what happened, whether you think Ryder or Saunders won, regardless, Saunders was, you know, up until his last fight with Canelo, he was an unbeaten 2-weight world champion, an absolute stylist, an incredible amateur, and one of Britain's best fighters that we had. And, you know, regardless of what you think, who won that fight, Ryder pushed him further than any other opponent that pushed him, more than Chris Eubank pushed him. So that's obviously, you know, a really good sort of fight to look back on. And then another recent loss, his most recent loss, was to Callum Smith in 2019 for the WBA World Super Middleweight title, and it ended in a unanimous decision shutout loss, where everybody watching that fight, me included, maybe you included, everyone other than Liverpool fans, Scousers, everyone scored that fight to Ryder. I'm not sure what the judges were seeing. Was it the home crowd that sort of, you know, swayed every single punch that landed towards Smith getting those rounds? But for me, Ryder won that fight, and I don't think there's any question that he won that fight. So that's why I really feel sorry for him. I hope he does become a world champion. This is probably his last chance, his last rally in his career to do that. But it's going to be very cruel for him to finish his career not having won a world title, because he definitely deserved to win that one against Smith, in my eyes. I think in a lot of people's eyes, but that's me speaking personally. Another controversial decision, which went the other way, was against Daniel Jacobs. I mean, Daniel Jacobs won, you know, pretty much the first 6 rounds in that fight. Yeah, I think pretty much the first 6 rounds Daniel Jacobs won. Maybe there was a couple that could have been shared. And it weren't until round 7 where Ryder really started to sort of turn it on and up the pressure and up the pace, and he got in on the inside. To be fair to him, it took him a while to get in on the inside and to do what he wanted to do, because Daniel Jacobs, you know, he's a 2-time middleweight champion. He's, you know, he's very good. He was faded in that fight. We saw that in the second half. He faded. Ryder came on strong. You know, first half of the fight was Jacobs. Second half of the fight was Ryder's. So it was such an even bout. And, you know, Ryder got the decision. Again, the home crowd, did they sort of sway the judges to just about score it to him? It was a debatable decision, whichever way you view it. I personally, as you know, watching that fight, thought, yes, Ryder's just done enough there. But watching it back, he didn't do enough. He had too much of a deficit to overcome in order to win that fight. But again, you know, you're talking about a round or two either way. So those close contests, you can't call them a robbery. You know, they can only ever be called close contests, and depends which way you scored it, and that's boxing. So he was lucky to get that one. But after, you know, after a few that have gone against him, you know, it's not something you'd hold against him, me personally. I mean, one thing to take from that showing from Ryder is that he going into this fight might take a few rounds to suss Parker out. He, especially being a switch hitter, a little bit confusing, a little bit complicated for opponents to sort of deal with and work out, and very frustrating style switch hitters bring. So he might do the same thing that he did with Jacobs. He might take 3-4 rounds to try and suss him out and try and do what he wants to do. No doubt that trainer Tony Sims is going to equip him with the best game plan possible, which he does for his fighters. He'll give him the best game plan that he can take into that fight. And Ryder, he's been lazy in some fights, but he is disciplined. He will try and follow that game plan to the letter. So yeah, he's going to take a few rounds to suss him out. It could be a little while before Ryder can get into his groove. It's something he's going to want to do straight away. But sometimes, you know, to try and get on the inside of fighters and sort of get off your best work, it does take a little while to do that in the early stages of a fight. But the quicker he does that, the more chance he'll get of start scoring those rounds in his favour towards, hopefully, the majority of rounds going towards him if it comes to a decision. Yeah, I mean, there is a size difference here. Parker is 6 foot. I think that's about, you know, 3 inches taller. I know that he's 5'9", so 2 inches, 3 inches taller. He's got a reach advantage as well by a couple of inches. And a lot of people have said, you know, the size advantage is going to be a key factor in this fight. But me personally, I don't think so, because John Ryder, nearly every fight he's gone up against is someone taller than him. And against Callum Smith, did Callum Smith have an advantage with that? No, if anything, I think there was a disadvantage there. Callum Smith couldn't sort of stoop down low and crack in those body shots like he normally likes to do. He likes a body shot, and Parker, we know he loves a body shot. Is Parker going to be able to stoop down that low, bend those knees to get those body shots in around the back? No, maybe the size difference means that he won't be able to, like Callum Smith couldn't either. So that, if anything, I don't think it's an advantage. I don't think the size is a disadvantage either. So I don't think that is going to play any part in this fight. The Derbyshire man switches stances a lot. I do find that something that it's hard for opponents to deal with. It's mentally draining. It's frustrating. You know, if you're constantly having to think or having to change, it is draining for a fighter to have to do that. But Ryder being a southpaw himself, personally, again, I don't see that as being a key factor that's going to affect him in this fight. So I don't think that's going to concern Ryder. The key factors Parker will have, I believe, is that Parker will have the strength and the power in his corner, the confidence and the momentum that an unbeaten champion has. That's all going to be in his favour. He's knocked out his last 5 opponents. He's going to go in there with like, not an air of invincibility, but something close to it. That confidence of knocking out your last 5 fighters, never being beaten, that's a great confidence to have. Once you've lost that confidence, it's almost impossible to get it back. So that's going to be something that he's going to have over Ryder. Ryder has been beaten 5 times before, and he's been knocked out before as well, which is obviously going to be something that Parker's going to be hoping that he can do as well, because he is heavy-handed. But then obviously he's going in against someone like Williams, who's a tough cookie, and I think the best opponent he's ever faced. So he's going to go in there and he's going to at some point have to show some respect. Ryder's best assets, I think, is obviously, you know, being 34 years old, having much more fights, been around a lot longer. His vast experience and schooling. You know, he's a cerebral fighter. He's an educated guy. He's clever. He's intelligent. And that experience, he's been in with better opponents than Parker, and beaten better opponents. So that is going to be his biggest asset going into this fight. In terms of their styles, we've already ascertained, you know, Ryder's going to do what he does. He's going to go in, try and get on the inside, where he's one of the best inside fighters in his weight in our country. You know, one of the best inside fighters in the world. That's how he managed to beat Jacobs. You know, by managing to get on the inside and out punching him and outlanding him and outmaneuvering him. So that is something that if he can do early, I think the fight will be his all the way through. Parker obviously will endeavour to use his size and strength. He'll want to keep him on the end of his punches, not allow him to get too close, and he'll want to sort of, yeah, keep him at the end of his punches where he can maybe, you know, reel off a couple of those big shots of his that he likes to land in. If he can do that, and if he can actually target Ryder's body, then that's something that Parker will have a real, you know, success with. My prediction, I said before, trainer Tony Sims, one of the best trainers in the country, I think he's going to equip Ryder with the best game plan possible. If he can keep on at Ryder in the corners in between rounds to make sure he zacks that game plan to the letter, then if he can keep him disciplined, keep him working hard, then I think that John Ryder will win via a very, very close points decision. I could see it being either mixed or split, but I just think he has to get started early, and he has to exact his game plan from rounds 1, 2, 3 at the latest. And if he can keep that pressure up, he's not a killer like, he hasn't got a killer instinct like Parker has. Parker has a killer instinct. He lands a big shot and he wants to go in and finish the fight. Ryder kind of lets his opponents off the hook at times, you can sort of say. So he's not a big finisher. He has got power because he's knocked a lot of people out. He's knocked a lot of people down. So he does have power, but he doesn't have that killer instinct that Parker has. So that's obviously another advantage to the Derbyshire man. But I do think the Londoner, the vast experience, the home crowd cheering every shot like they did when they fought Jacobs at Ali Pali. The crowd could sway the judges to giving a really, really close fight, a really close contest. Just Ryder just about edging it on points. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the channel. There'll be much more previews and predictions to come. Thanks very much. Take care.